Hello, I'm Calvin Reid. I'm a senior news editor of Publishers Weekly. I'm editor of PW Comics World, PW's online coverage of comics and graphic novel publishing. I'm editor of The Fanatic, PW's twice a month comics and pop culture newsletter. And I'm also co-host of More to Come, PW's weekly podcast on comics and graphic novels. Now, but enough about me. I'm also more than pleased to welcome you to the 2022 Brooklyn Festival's virtual festival day for a conversation with Kate Gavino, Gengoroh Tagame, and Malaka Gharib. And due to a scheduling problems, James Spooner, the author of The High Desert, he will not be able to join us right now. And before we begin, I want to let you know that books by all of these authors on this program can be purchased at a link that will appear somewhere below. All right, let's talk about this. Coming of age, the life-changing moment. In memoir or memoiristic books, there's often that fateful moment when a chance meeting, a gut instinct, a new environment, or some potent combination of all three can change the course of a life forever. And so we're going to see how all of these authors do something along all of those lines, whether it's a moment, a series of moments, or the arc of their lives. We encounter the things that bring change to their lives. And we're going to start off. Let me introduce everybody that's on the program today. We're going to start off with Kate Gavino, the author of A Career in Books, a graphic novel about friends, money, and the occasional duck butt. And I think that kind of gives you some idea of where we're going. Kate is the author and illustrator of Last Night's Reading and the graphic novels Senpaku and A Career in Books, which I just mentioned. Her work has appeared in The New Yorker, The Believer, Long Reads, on Oprah.com, and more. And she was both the greatest and apparently the worst at the editorial assistant. And as we talk more about her book, I think you'll find out she knows about what she speaks. And also Gengoroh Tagame. He was born in 1964. He joins us from Tokyo. He has worked as an art director while writing manga and prose fiction, contributes illustrations for various magazines. In 1994, he co-founded the epical G-Men magazine. And by 1996, he was working full-time as an openly gay artist. He is the author of dozens of graphic novels and stories that have been translated into English, French, Italian, and Korean. His artwork has been exhibited in galleries across Europe and America. My Brother's Husband marks his first all-ages graphic novel and earned him the Japan Media Arts Award for Outstanding Work of Manga from the Agency of Cultural Affairs. In 2018, it received the Eisner Award for the best U.S. edition of International Material Asia. Our Colors is his latest novel, and a novel we'll be talking about today. Malaka Gharib, the author of It Won't Always Be Like This, which is an extension of her earlier memoir and illustrates how she navigates multiple cultural legacies. She is a writer, journalist, and cartoonist. She's the author of I Was Their American Dream, a graphic memoir, which was named one of the best books of 2019 by the Washington Post, Kirkus Reviews, and many others, and went on to win the Arab American Book Award. By day, she works as an editor on NPR's Science Desk. Her comics have been featured in The New Yorker, Los Angeles Times, and The Believer. She lives in Nashville with her husband, Darren, and her dog, Shibu. It Won't Always Be Like This is her new graphic novel, which we will be talking about. And what I neglected to say about Tagame's book, Our Colors, it is a moving fictional account of a gay teenager struggling to live openly in a society that he knows will reject him. So we're going to talk more about all of these books. So welcome to all of you. So I'm going to start out just throwing a question to Kate. And in some form or other, I'm going to ask all of you this question. And tell us a little bit about the plot of your book, and especially the central characters, Nina, Sylvia, Shireen, and of course, Veronica.
Thanks for that intro, Calvin. Yeah, so A Korean Books follows three friends, Shirin, Nina, and Sylvia, following their first jobs after graduating college. The three girls all met during college and became best friends very quickly. And they all shared this dream of working in the book publishing world. So the book follows that first year after they graduate. Each girl works for a different publisher. Nina works for a giant corporate publisher. Sylvia works for a small indie press that's funded by someone's trust fund, and Shirin works for a traditional academic press. And all three girls along the way, they kind of discover or become disillusioned with the publishing world. They kind of see how the sausage is made in terms of how books are published, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And also they befriend a 96-year-old woman who happens to be their neighbor named Veronica Vo, and they discover that back in the 80s, she won the Booker Prize, and they kind of become hell-bent on getting her the credit that she deserved, that she never got during the peak of her career. And they kind of all band behind her, and during this mission to get her that recognition, they also kind of decide what they kind of see what they want and don't want in their careers. They learn more about like their own mental health struggles. They also just discover that a career in books might not be exactly what they pictured. So it's basically a year in their life during that time.
All right. Well, we're gonna investigate a little bit more of that a little later. Malaka, your book works as somewhat of an extension of your earlier memoir, and as you navigate these multiple cultural legacies. Can you tell us more about the new book and how you chronicle your extended family and your parents and now your stepmother? And you spend a lot more time in Egypt in this book.
Yeah, so my new book, It Won't Always Be Like This, is about all of my childhood summers in the Middle East, in Cairo, in Alexandria, and in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar. And basically, it's less about identity, which my first book was about identity and trying to reckon my emotions and feelings and relationship with being Filipino, Egyptian American. This book is about trying to understand my role in my dad's new family. My dad, I find out in one summer when I was 9, he had remarried. And so I just had to sort of find again what my place was in my dad's life, and make these relationships with these people who my stepmother did not know how to speak very good English. And then my siblings would eventually not know how to speak English too. So I had to somehow forge a bond with these people in a place that I just didn't feel, I knew that I was defined by being Middle Eastern, but I didn't feel connected or a part or accepted in that culture. Because I lived in Los Angeles and then I had to fly back and forth every summer. So the book is really about creating what it means to create a relationship without language, without social norms, without knowledge of social norms and customs, without knowledge of culture. And you will not believe how much you can really connect with somebody without any of those factors. And I think what's important about the book is that it's set inside a Middle Eastern home. Arab homes and Arab families are a very closed unit, very closed society. We don't really let people inside our homes. It's a very private culture. So we always like to put our best face forward, right? Like we don't want to let that air the dirty laundry out. So, it's a very intimate look inside an Arab family's life.
Ooh, yeah. And Gengoroh, can you describe our colors for our listeners? And in particular, the context, the social context that the book is set in, and really the struggles of Sir Itoda, your central character, and basically how he's traumatized by the anti-gay social context around him and coming out.
訳しましょうか。とにかく僕らの色彩のあらすじとその社会的背景などなど。
はい。わかりました。 僕らの色彩というのの主人公は、井戸田空という、高校生の男子です。で、彼は、自分がゲイだというのを自覚はしていますけれども、それを誰にも言うことができないという状態、クローゼットの状態にあります。で、そんな彼がある日、初めて自分以外のゲイの人に出会って、その人は、かなり年配の、バーのマスターで、その人はゲイであると同時にオープンリーゲイで、自分のセクシャリティを隠さない存在という、人なので、それに出会ったことによって彼の生活が一気に変わっていくといったような話です。
So Our Colors is about a boy, high school senior named Itoda Sora, who knows he's gay but doesn't feel they can come out with that. And then one day, he has this transformative encounter with an older gentleman who's also gay but is totally out, unapologetically living his gay life. And the story ensuing is just about Sora's sort of self-awakening and realization through this relationship with an older out man.
で、やはりこの、主人公の空が、自分がゲイであることをオープンにできないという背景には、日本の社会であまりそのゲイをオープンリーゲイの人がいないという、それをオープンにしたとしたら、何が起こるのかわからない。差別をされるかもしれないし、いじめられるかもしれないし、そういうことがわからない。で、また同時にその同性愛者に対する、ゲイに対する理解や知識もないので、日常的に、自分が接している相手が、同性愛者である可能性を考えない人、つまり、とてもストレートセントリックな、社会があるので、それを前にやはり一歩踏み出して自分をオープンにはできないといった状況があります。
And so the social context that you're referring to, Calvin, is that not so much the blatant sort of discrimination, but just in Japanese society, being out is so uncommon that the actual problem is a gay individual's inability to know what kind of reception they will have if they come out. So not understanding if it's going to be discriminatory or accepting, or if they'll face bullying. And socially, there's just a very limited understanding and knowledge of gay culture around homosexuality. And so I think for young gay people, it's difficult to imagine living a life with a partner of same sex in a gay or queer context. So that is an important circumstance detail of the story.
Yeah, I mean, that, and the book certainly explores that, and we'll come to some more questions about that a little as we go along. We're going to jump right back to Kate now. You know, your book really, your book is really enormously entertaining, particularly if you work in book publishing, as of course you once did. I mean, I guess you still do, really. You write the books now. But you know, it deconstructs the professional infrastructure of book publishing and all of its flawed glory. But you really go deeply into the lives of professional women. As entertaining as this book is, it really does. It really has some really, you know, and it's an anthropology of book publishing in some ways. And in particular, as regards these three young Asian American women. But it also looks into so many other issues, it seems to me, about women in the professional world, friendship, ambition, mental health, mentoring. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on how you structured all of these issues in this really page turner that, you know, really kind of gets to the nitty gritty of what it's like to work in book publishing?
Yeah, Yeah, you mentioned friendship, and that's definitely the backbone of the book. And I wanted the three girls' friendship included, and also their friendship with Veronica, to kind of be the cornerstone of the entire book, and kind of what fuels them to keep going in jobs that they hate, or just kind of navigating this new industry to them. And so that's kind of like running in the background through all of this. And then there's their ambition, which kind of, they kind of all start off at the same level, where they're just eager to kind of get a foothold into this industry. But Nina in particular kind of has the greatest ambition of the three girls, where like she knows she wants to be an editor. She's very cutthroat about how she's gonna reach that goal. And to her, like, it's a very clear-cut path, but then she quickly sees that like she can do everything right, but it's not always going to work out how she sees. And she also kind of sees kind of like the latter end of ambition through their friendship with Veronica, who achieved a certain level of success, but at the end she still ended up dissatisfied. And that kind of ties into like what they kind of want out of their careers. For Veronica, all she wanted basically was a place to call her own, a room of her own in a sense. And she's kind of happy kind of living in obscurity and still continuing to write and do what she loves, even if it's not without any recognition. So kind of like all ties back into book publishing in that way, because they all share like this love of books, but the way that their relationship to books, writing, publishing changes throughout the graphic novel. And each girl kind of reevaluates their relationship through this year of working that closely within the book publishing world.
All right, let's jump to Malaka. Yeah, comics obviously offer a variety of strategies to deliver information in the narrative, information about the characters. Can you, your narrative in this book differs, from your earlier book, which, kind of follows you through elementary school, high school, college. You use recipes, puzzles, but this, your new book is a little different. It's still fun, but it has a more it has a more weighty cast to it in some ways in terms of the life issues you're facing. Is that accurate? Can you talk about the difference between this book, obviously, and how your visual syntax, your storytelling syntax changes?
Yeah. So my first book was very much written like a diary. There were games in it. There were quizzes. There were recipes. There was a paper doll. There was a zine that you could cut out. It was just a very, very interactive book. And it had a really, really kind of like spastic, excited style. And it was kind of like me turned up to 11, and I was kind of just like, my eyes were bugging out of my head and like steam was coming out of my ears. I was very like highly, animated in that book. And that was really a personal journey chronologically about my feelings toward my races as the years went on from childhood to adulthood. This book is a little bit, is written more like a traditional graphic novel. It's a story about a family. And it's all panels. There's no like interactive elements to it really. And it does have more of a serious tone because the subject matter is slightly more adult, I guess, more serious. It's about it's about the death of I don't want to give it away, but like, it's about marriage troubles and blended families and things like that, and growing up in the Arab world. I think that I was really inspired in this particular book to sort of use as few words and lines in my illustration as possible to communicate to communicate high emotion. So for me, one of my greatest inspirations and forms of communication is making mini zines. And sometimes my zines are like literally this small. They're the size of a postage stamp. And I try to tell comics in a really, really tight, tiny format. And that's a real challenge for me, because I like to see if I can pack as much information and emotion as possible in that tiny space. And similarly, in my new graphic novel, I tried to see if I could, if the omission of things, if omission of details, and omission of lines, and omission of illustration, with just these very sketch-like airy drawings could help you fill in the gaps of what I was trying to convey. I see this book a little bit more poetic for me in terms of making comics. It felt like I was doing a more scaled back, mature version of what I had done in the first book.
Gengoroh, your book it's really moving. I mean, the story of this young man, but it's also it's moving and disturbing as well. But it's also very sweet and inspiring and hopeful as well, as he wrestles with this inner turmoil of and his fear of it being revealed that he's gay. Can you? Well, you did talk a little bit about the older man, the older gay man. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about just how meaningful and how important this can be for a young gay man or any gay person coming out in Japan.
まあいうように空みたいな若い男の子にとってそういうなんかカミングアウトするかしないかを悩んでいる中でそういう異なる世代からのね高齢化とか考えつつ雨宮さんの影響とか一般人にとってどういうインパクトがあるかとかインパクトの可能性ことをちょっと。
わかりました。さっきもちょっと言いましたけれども、その日本だとオープンリーゲイというのがとても少ないんですね。で、空のような悩める10代の若者にとっては、自分が将来どういうふうにゲイとして成長するのかというロールモデルというのが身の回りにいないということにもなるんですね。でそういう意味では、先の年配のオープンリーゲイがいるというのは若者に対してロールモデルになりうるということでとても重要な意味を持っていると思います。
So first, just to reiterate what I was saying earlier about how it is pretty uncommon to be openly out in Japan, notwithstanding being gay or finding your communities, but just being completely open. And so for young gay people, especially teenagers, that means that they are lacking in role models of older gay people who can model what life in the future might look like for them. And when you have all these questions, it's hard to understand how you might mature or grow as an individual, as a gay individual. So in that sense, meeting an older gay man living out loud can be quite profound.
で、それと、
Go ahead. どうぞ。
あとですね、世代の違う、人間、まあ多分これはゲイであろうとストレートであろうと同じだと思うんですけれども、やっぱりみんなそれぞれ自分が、生きてきた時代の影響を受けて考え方とかもそういう影響の下にあるわけですけれども。で、私が見ている感じ、今の若い世代のゲイというのは、自分がゲイであるということに対してはそんなに抵抗なく受容できていると思うんですね。で、これは上の世代のそのゲイであること自体に後ろめたさを感じていたような時代とは大きな違いだと思います。で、それぞれの立場でもそういう違いがありつつ、そこには共通した悩みがあったりとか、あとは、くぐり抜けなければいけない試練のようなものがある場合に、若者の若者のアスペクトと、年配の人のアスペクトが、それぞれ、お互いにそのコミュニケートすることで、お互いに、 いい相互影響を与えるのが私は理想的だと思ってますね。で、そういう関係性の可能性というのをこの漫画の中でちょっと書いてみました。
And, you know, the generational differences are not just between experience, young versus old, but eras. The older generation has experienced a different set of things than the younger folks. But, you know, today's younger queer people, I would argue, face a little less resistance to their identity forming and coming out. And so maybe that's also something that older generations are learning as well. So there's that sort of looking in both directions, right? It's not just Sora's influenced by Amamiya, but Amamiya being influenced by Sora. And so there are aspects of either side of that age gap that benefit from learning from each other. And so I'm really positing the potential, the possibilities around that relationship between generations, that mutual influence we can have with each other by sharing and communicating what it's like to be gay, and you know, from a different era.
And I also want to ask him a little about the role of art, the idea of art, the sort of metaphorical connection and power of art in the book, in the title, and obviously since this whole panel and we're all talking about whether it's memoir or fiction, how these moments in these works have affected, you know, the lives, I guess, of the authors, maybe not directly and indirectly. Maybe you can talk a little bit to us about the role of art, because the young teenager is an artist. That is a theme throughout the book in terms of the colors. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and its impact on his life.
自己発見以上に美術そのものの影響、そのアートとか色彩とかの影響のことをちょっと空にとってその重要性とか。
そうですね。タイトルにもあるように、色彩というのは人それぞれというのは、ありますね。そしてその物語の中で使われる色をいっぱい出しているというのは、そういった部分のメタファーでもあります。で、アーティストが絵を描くというのは、それは世界をその紙の上に作り出すという作業でもあって、で、それはある意味その、なんて言えばいいのかな。世界に合わせて自分を変えるのではなくて、自分に合った世界に変えていくというニュアンスがあるような気がするんですね。それは、例えばこれは私自身がその若い頃になんとなく世界一般的な世界と自分の間にギャップがあるような気がしてなんかそこにその見えない幕みたいなのがあって、うまくその世界と自分を結びつけられない、コミュニケートできないみたいなジレンマがあって、これはその自分がその同性愛者でゲイであるってことを自覚して、そしてそういう人が周りに誰もいなかったし、ロールモデルもいなかったしっていうような、そういうちょっとアイソレーティッドな気持ちみたいなのも影響してるんだと思いますけど、でもそんな世界と自分が触れ合うための手段というのの一つが絵だったんですね、私の場合は。絵を描くことで世界とつながろうとしたというのがあったので、その記憶が多分ヒントになったんだと思います。
Yeah, so it's right there in the title, colors are colors, sort of indicating that there are a variety, and of course we know the spectrum is wide and endless. So first indicating that there are just so many different ways of perceiving and living, and in just speaking to actually writing a story, or in Japanese we use the word monogatari, so just anything with like a narrative form, using all the colors available to you is in one sense a metaphor. But what I think might be interesting is, as an artist, having a spectrum or having colors at your disposal is a way of kind of changing your relationship to the world, so that you're not adapting yourself to the world, but you can actually adapt the world to meet you. So writing about the world using a variety of tones can actually help you find your place in that world when it doesn't seem to look exactly the way you think it should. For me personally, as a young gay man, I always felt that there was a gap between myself and the sort of perceived world, that there was some kind of invisible trap between us that I couldn't quite identify. And it was hard to sort of franchise the distance between who I felt I was as a person and the world as it was, functioning. So art was my touch point. Art was how I bridged that gap.
Great. All right. And so on that note, I'm going to jump back to Kate. And maybe you can tell us more about your visual syntax. There's so many things in the book you do. The price tagging, I'm curious about the white on black word balloons. Why the visual choices you made. And at a certain point, and also I'm curious to know about the ethnic backgrounds, how they figured in. Do they figure in how they respond to different things that these young women have to deal with in the book publishing industry? But yeah, tell us about your art style, how you develop the visual language that you use in this book.
Yeah, so anytime I create an illustrated work, I always ask myself, why am I telling this story using the graphic novel format? Like, why can't I just use text only or images only, for example? And for A Career in Books, one of the kind of visual stories I wanted to tell through the book was kind of how money was so, how the girls kind of saw price tags on everything and how it informed so much of their decisions. So for example, a lot of their, like when they're introduced to their bosses, I kind of show how much all of their bosses' clothing and accessories and like apartment accessories cost, just as kind of like a way to juxtapose like their low salaries with kind of like these things that their bosses so casually purchase or own without any second thought to how much they're paying their assistants. And it's also just a way to show kind of how, as young 20-somethings on an entry-level salary, like everything to them has a price tag, and one $20 salad lunch will mean that they won't have dinner that night, for example. So just adding price tags to things was just a kind of a funny filter to show how they're living their lives through that lens of their entry-level salary. And in terms of like their ethnic backgrounds, so Sharon and Sylvia, they're both Filipino American, and Nina is Japanese American. And they all meet in college. And something I mentioned in the book is like they are the three, they're kind of like the three Asian Americans in their English program, but they kind of make an effort not to be friends at first because they kind of don't want to seem like they're all becoming friends just because the three of them are Asian, but they end up gravitating toward each other, and they make connections based on the fact that they're all want a career in books. They're all obsessed with writing and reading. And the thing that they cherish is that they kind of have a shorthand with each other where they don't have to explain certain things. Like in the book, I say like they don't have to mention like they don't have to like explain their background of growing up with immigrant parents, or they don't have to explain why they prefer sticky rice over any other kind of rice. So it's like they're not friends because they're Asian American, but there is that shorthand that makes their friendship like much more easy and natural to them. But then specifically within that, there's those differences, like Sharon and Sylvia, like they are Southeast Asian and Nina is East Asian, and there's subtle differences there within their friendship. And then within that, like I kind of wanted to shy away from certain stereotypes and in some cases maybe lead into them at sometimes. So for example, Sharon is gay, and there's a stereotype of like the Asian tiger mom, but her and her mom have like a very loving, open relationship. She never even had to come out to her mom. And like, I just wanted to show like the broad spectrum of Asian American life in that sense. And then Nina, for example, she's dating a boy from Japan, who he's Japanese, not Japanese American. So she kind of rubs up against his Japanese parents, who kind of see her as like this strange American anomaly who's like career obsessed and she like a completely wrong fit for their son. Even though like she speaks perfect Japanese, she's perfectly respectful to them, but she just rubs them the wrong way. So there are like all these subtle differences within like the Asian American spectrum that I wanted to show, and being able to show that visually as well just like made it all the more richer, I think.
All right, Malaka. Yes, I want to return to your father. I mean, obviously, to me, he is. I mean, I think the question I sent you guys. You know, he emerges as this key figure. He's a pendulum. He's like a imposing, difficult figure, but then he's deeply sympathetic as well. So, I mean, you've touched on it. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so we know when I went to Egypt in the summertime, I kept thinking in my mind, like, what am I doing here? What am I doing embedded in this family? Like, I don't look like them. I don't even speak the same language. I don't even know this country. Like, I just don't understand why I'm here. Like, what is going to become of us? What is the point of all of this? And reflecting on it now while writing the book as an adult, I realized like it's a very simple but like what my dad was trying to do was to earnestly try to keep me in his life, which is like wonderful. And I think very overlooked as an angsty teenage girl. Yeah. He's trying to keep me in his life, and he wanted us to be a happy family unit. Like he literally, that was his dream, for us to all just be one happy family. And of course, like that was so hard to do when you have like, you know, it was my dad's third marriage. You know, he had married a much younger woman. He had these like 3 younger kids. He had a really stressful job. You know, my stepmom and my dad didn't really like, you know, they had their share of marital troubles, and then like me being thrown in the mix. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but he really earnestly tried. And I think that I came away from the book feeling like, I think that he came away reading, when he finished reading the book, he felt like he felt really seen. I think he felt like his efforts were finally seen, like finally somebody noticed all this stuff that I've been trying to do. But I don't even think that he knew that what he was doing. I think that he was just kind of like, it all was happening unsaid. And so he was really trying to create this family unit. And then of course, like I only appreciated that as an adult now, and which is why I named the book It Won't Always Be Like This, because that little family unit that my dad had created that was so effervescent and like transient, and it just lasted for a short time, and that was all we really had. As difficult as it was also very wonderful for us to be that family unit in those 15 years spent together. I think my dad and my stepmom were married for 17 years. So that was a time, and that time won't come again. But the connections that were forged during that time are lasting. I mean, I'm still like, I always, in my diaries, I like struggled to communicate with my siblings who didn't speak English. Well, now my You know, three of my siblings from Egypt live in the United States, and my brother just spent the entire summer with us in Nashville, working at the local Starbucks. So what would become of us? Like, my dad's efforts worked. We are all still together and connected.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, look, this has been a great conversation. These are all terrific books with great insights. We're going to end here. I do want to add quickly that, you know, due to scheduling conflicts, James Spooner, the author of The High Desert, Black Punk Nowhere, could not join the panel, but we're going to try and have insert a segment, a short conversation with him. Okay, we're back. Now, I told you before we had missed James Spooner, but, you know, due to the magic of the internet, he's here.
Hey.
Hey, James, this is great. So let me introduce you. This is James Spooner, author of The High Desert, Black Punk Nowhere, a graphic memoir. You probably know him more as a documentary filmmaker. His memoir, his book, covers some of the same ground that his film did, an examination of Black identity, his Black identity, I would say, within an overwhelmingly white subculture of the punk music scene of the 1980s and 1990s. James is a graphic novelist, tattoo artist, illustrator, filmmaker. His seminal documentary, Afro Punk, premiered at national, international film festivals, including many of them, Toronto International. He is also the co-founder of the Afro Punk Festival, which has audiences everywhere. And we're going to talk about his debut graphic memoir. James, it's great to see you and talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The first thing we want to do, really, what I want to do is tell us about yourself. I mean, this is what you do in the book. Tell us about yourself, your family, and the social context you present in the High Desert.
All right. So the High Desert takes place in my 8th grade year, the first year I found punk. And I lived in this very small desert town, not a lot of diversity. And my parents were divorced, so I was living with my mom, who's white. My dad was in New York, and I hadn't seen him for a number of years. And that's kind of where we start in the book.
So, of course, my next question is, tell us about the impact that punk music had on you and really your whole community. But you in particular, obviously, as a young mixed race kid in this context that you just described. Yeah,
well, I think that there's two like separate answers to that question. My initial gravitation towards punk, I think, came out of anger. You know, a lot of just like normal teen angst, but also being a Black kid in this this environment that wasn't very friendly to Black kids. I mean, we're talking about like actual Nazis, real, not just microaggressions, but real racist slurs being yelled at me and all that kind of stuff from strangers out car windows. So just like having that experience caused a lot of internal strife, but also, not having my dad around, like also, just not having a lot of money. Just there's a lot of reasons that I, in retrospect, can see that I had a lot of angst, and punk was felt like a good answer to that, So like I say in the book, when I heard Keith Morris from Black Flag screaming, "I don't care," like, that was something I related to, What I didn't account for, what I didn't yet know, was the positive side of punk rock, the side that is constructive as opposed to destructive. And that's kind of the journey of what this this book addresses. Is, you know, it's that weaving through all of the you know, the garbage, the nihilism, you know, the anger and angst, to find what punk rock is really about. Which, you know, the next answer to that question, what did punk really do for me, is it taught me DIY, do it yourself movement. It gave me the tools that I use today, that I'm using right now, touring my book. You know, it's just that that kind of we don't have to wait for permission from the gatekeepers to do stuff. So I can be 40-some-year-old guy and say, I'm going to make a graphic novel, having never even really read comics that much before. You know, that's that punk energy.
I want to talk to you about that, but you know what? First, I'd love for you to talk, you know, a little bit about. There are a number of Black personalities that are in your world with you. I mean, it's not a lot, but there are these key folks, and I think it's about 4 of them: Troy, Ty, Brandy. Could you tell us a little bit about them and how they fit into your story of your life?
Sure. So probably most importantly is Ty. He was the first punk that I ever met. He also was a Black dude. So my introduction was like, I didn't have a question as to whether I could be there. You know, that came, you know, a couple minutes later when I met his good friends who were Nazis. You know?
Yes. Okay. His good friends.
And then there was, you know, just Brandy, who was a kid I went to elementary school with. She was just like, I guess you would call just a mainstream Black girl. And I think in the book, she just kind of represents another lane, another option, you know? And then I guess speaking of options, there was Troy, who I met my first day of school. And he was a held back kid from he was a gangster crip, and he just took to me, you know. And like I said in the book, I wasn't sure if he was looking for a customer or a friend. I think it was a little bit of both, you know. But he saw that I'm Black, and he wanted me to be part of that family, you know. So in the desert, there's these examples of ways to be Black, you know. And so I wanted to show that this was another option. This was the option that felt right, you know. And then the fourth person that you talk about, excluding my father, is the Seven, who I met in New York.
Yeah.
And he's the one who introduced me to some of what I would say, like, what punk really is about, you know.
And I will say that's a key part, as for a guy like me, a New York romantic. There's this part in the book where New York and the East Village. I live around the corner from ABC No Rio.
Okay.
The impact that seemed to have on you in terms of opening up your understanding of really what punk really means.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think once you get out of your world, your small bubble, which in my case was this, like, you know, desolate, sandy, windy town with nothing much to do, going to visit my dad and then being in New York City, the options are endless, right? So once you have all those options, then yeah, there's a lot more opportunities to make bad decisions, but there's also a ton more opportunities to make good ones. And that's what going there for that Christmas break and meeting those few positive role models were like, oh, dang, that's that's what punk's really about. So then I could come back to my little town with a little bit of, you know, bravado, or a little bit more like, look, I actually know, like, so you guys are the ones who don't have it right, you know.
You brought that New York swagger back with you. There you are, punk swagger. Let me make
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we only have a little more time, but I do want to hear. I mean, why graphic novel? You're a documentary filmmaker. You know, what was the process like switching over to words and drawings?
Yeah.
What was that like, and what did it entail?
Well, I think it was a bit of this is like the right medium for the time, for my time. As you've mentioned a couple times, I made film. A good portion of my 20s was spent in documentary and script writing, and, you know, kind of learning that craft. Then I stepped away, and most of my 30s, all of my 30s, a tattoo artist. I still am a tattoo artist. So, you know, I was drawing. I'm drawing every single day, and then when I started dating my current partner about 7 years ago, she introduced memoir comics to me, and it just like, oh, I can make a movie in a book, you know. Like, I don't have, again, no gatekeepers, no fund, you know, trying to get producers or anything. I can just do this by myself and tell the stories that I want to tell. And if it gets made into a movie someday, great, you know.
All right, there you go. James Spooner, The High Desert Black Punk Nowhere. It's out now. Great to talk to you.
Thanks for including me.
You bet. But I wanted to thank you, Kate Gavino, Gengoroh Tagame, Malaka Gharib. Everyone, please remember you can order books in the link below, and please consider making a donation to the Brooklyn Book Festival, which this year is celebrating its 17th year of presenting free literary programming. And a reminder that if you are in New York City next week, the in-person festival takes place on October 2nd in downtown Brooklyn. Thanks to all of you